Kojo, why are you carrying oranges on the roadside? My brother froze. The tray on his head tilted slightly, and 2 oranges rolled into the dust near my feet. I stared at his face, then at the faded shirt hanging loosely on his shoulders. Why are you not in school? I asked again, my voice sharper now. Kojo, answer me. I sent your fees, every term, every single term for 5 years. He looked down. Then he said words that made my blood run cold. Sister, I stopped going to school last year. They said my fees were never paid. Never paid? For a moment, the whole roadside in our village outside Cape Coast seemed to go silent. The women selling smoked fish, the children chasing a punctured football, the trotro horn blaring at the junction. Everything faded behind the pounding in my chest. Because for 5 years in Accra, I had lived like a shadow to keep that boy in school. And now he was standing in front of me, barefoot in the dust, selling oranges like a child who had been forgotten. I did not know it then, but before that week ended, I would discover that the person who stole my brother's future was not a stranger. It was my own aunt, and what she did with my money would shake our whole family. My name is Akosua, and this is the story of how I came home believing I had sacrificed for my family, only to discover that someone close to me had been building a secret life with every sadie I sent. I used to think suffering made sense if the people you loved were safe. That belief carried me through 5 hard years in Accra. I worked first in a chop bar washing plates until midnight, my hands cracking from soap and hot water. Later, I found work in a small salon at Medina, braiding hair from morning till evening, standing so long my legs would throb even in my sleep. There were weeks I ate only plain rice and pepper so I could save more. There were months I wore the same 2 dresses so I would not spend money on myself. Every sacrifice had one purpose. My younger brother, Kojo, would stay in school. My mother, Abena, would not have to beg anybody. And one day, when I returned to the village, I would come home not with riches, but with proof that I had not abandoned my family. I sent money every month: school fees, books, exam registration, uniforms, sometimes extra money for food when prices became too high, sometimes medicine for my mother when her chest pains started again during the rainy season. At first, I used to send the money directly to my mother through mobile money. But my mother could not read well, and she always feared pressing the wrong button on her phone. That was when my aunt, my mother's elder sister, Auntie Efua, stepped in. "Let me help," she said. "I am here. I go to town often. I understand these things better. Send the money to me and I will make sure your mother and Kojo get everything." She was family, older, respected. The kind of woman everybody greeted first at funerals and family meetings. The kind of woman who always spoke like she had wisdom tucked into every word. So I trusted her. I trusted her with my brother's future. And for 5 years, that trust never crossed my mind as a mistake. Because each time I called home, I heard the same things. "Akosua, God bless you. Kojo is doing well. The school has received the money. Your brother will make you proud." Sometimes I even heard Kojo in the background, laughing with friends, or my mother asking whether I had eaten. It sounded like everything was working. It sounded like my suffering had meaning. Until the day I came home without warning. My salon madam in Accra had decided to relocate to Kumasi and reduce staff. I was one of those she let go. She paid me what she owed, and as I held the envelope in my hand, I thought maybe God was finally telling me to rest. So I packed my clothes, my old transfer receipts, and a small gold-colored wristwatch I had bought for Kojo. I wanted to surprise them. I imagined Kojo taller, maybe wearing his school uniform, maybe speaking English with new confidence. I imagined my mother crying when she saw me. I imagined Auntie Efua saying, "You see, your suffering was not wasted." But when the trotro dropped me at the village junction that afternoon, it was not school books I saw in my brother's hands. It was oranges, dusty oranges on a tray. His slippers were nearly torn through at the heel. His eyes looked older than a boy his age should have looked. The smile that began on his face when he first recognized me disappeared the moment I asked why he was not in school. That was the beginning, the moment the earth beneath my feet shifted. Kojo would not answer me properly there on the roadside. He kept glancing around nervously, like a child afraid someone might hear the truth leaving his mouth. "Let's go home," he said softly. His voice had changed. Not just deeper, smaller, like fear had sat inside it for too long. We walked in silence toward the house I had not seen in 5 years. The path was the same red earth, the same neem tree near old Kweku's kiosk, the same goats wandering as if the village belonged more to them than to us. But my chest tightened more with each step, because nothing about Kojo's silence felt normal. When we got to our compound, my mother was sitting on a wooden stool outside, sorting contomire leaves into a basin. The moment she saw me, her hands stopped moving. "Akosua." She stood so quickly the basin tipped. Leaves scattered into the dust. Then she burst into tears and held me so tightly my shoulder hurt. For a few seconds, I let myself melt into that embrace. For a few seconds, I wanted to believe I had only misunderstood what I saw at the junction. That Kojo had only been helping someone for a few minutes. That school had closed early. That there was an explanation. But then I pulled back, looked at Kojo, and asked the question again. "Why is he not in school?" My mother blinked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said slowly, "why is Kojo selling oranges on the roadside in the middle of the school day?" Before my mother could answer, another voice floated in from the gate. "Hey, Akosua! So you have finally come." Auntie Efua. She entered with a basket on her arm and a smile already prepared. But the smile faded when she felt the tension in the yard. "What is happening here?" she asked. I turned to her. "Auntie, Kojo says his school fees were never paid." Something flickered across her face. It was quick, so quick that if I had not spent years reading difficult customers in the salon, I might have missed it. But I saw it. A crack. Just for 1 second. Then she laughed, a small, dismissive laugh. "These children," she said, "they like saying things without explaining properly. Maybe he missed 1 term. Maybe there was confusion at the school." Kojo kept his eyes down. I faced him. "Did you miss 1 term?" He swallowed. Then barely above a whisper, he said, 3 terms. My mother dropped back onto the stool as if her knees had failed. 3 terms? She repeated. "No, that cannot be right." I looked from her to my aunt. "Auntie Efua, I sent the money." "Yes, and I used it for the family," she replied too quickly. "For the family?" I repeated. "School fees are for school. How does my brother miss 3 terms if I sent the fees?" She clicked her tongue. "Must you come from Accra and start shouting before you understand village problems? Your mother was sick many times. Food became expensive. The roof leaked. Money moves, Akosua. It does not stand still waiting for one thing." I felt something hot rise inside me. "Then why did nobody tell me?" I asked. Why did you all keep saying the school was paid? My mother looked at me in shock. Paid? Who said that? I turned slowly toward her. You did. On the phone. Her face crumpled with confusion. No, my daughter. I always asked your auntie. She always told me you had sent enough for everything and that Kojo's school was handled. The yard went very still. Now it was not just me who was looking at Auntie Efua. My mother was looking at her too. Auntie Efua shifted the basket on her arm. Why are all of you staring at me? She said. Did I not help this family? When your mother was coughing, who bought medicine? When prices rose, who bought maize? You think life is simple because you stand in Accra and send small money? Small money. 5 years of my back, my feet, my hunger, called small money. That was the moment suspicion became something heavier, not proof, but weight. A feeling that if I pulled one thread in this house, something ugly would come apart. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on the old raffia mat in the room I had shared with my mother as a girl, staring into the dark. My bag was beside me. Inside it were years of receipts I had kept out of habit, not because I doubted my family, only because hard-earned money teaches you to keep records. I pulled them out one by one, mobile money transfers, cash deposits, dates circled in pen, amounts written on folded scraps of paper. I remembered them all. 200 CDs, 400, 700 for exams, 300 for textbooks, 500 when Kojo was supposed to be preparing for senior high entrance. Each receipt felt like a witness. A small paper voice saying, "You did your part." Outside, I heard low voices. At first, I thought it was neighbors passing. Then I recognized my aunt. I moved quietly to the window and lifted the curtain edge. Moonlight washed the yard silver. Near the mango tree, Auntie Efua stood with a man I did not know. He wore a cap and held a folder under his arm. They were speaking in hushed voices. I could not hear every word, but one sentence reached me clearly. If she starts asking for records, the land papers must not be in the room. Land papers? My heart kicked hard. The man muttered something I could not catch. My aunt answered, sharper this time. I said, "Move them tomorrow. She is not as foolish as her mother." I stepped back from the window so fast my heel struck the wall. Land papers. My money had not paid my brother's fees. It had not repaired the roof properly. It had not built security for the family. So what land papers was my aunt talking about in the middle of the night? And why did she sound afraid? I waited until the voices disappeared before lying down again. But there was no sleep after that. Only memories, the calls, the blessings, the trust. And beneath it all, a new question that throbbed like pain behind my eyes. What exactly had Auntie Efua been doing with my money for 5 years? The next morning, I found Kojo behind the house washing a plastic basin near the water drum. He startled when he saw me. "Relax," I said gently. "I only want the truth." He kept scrubbing the basin even though it was already clean. "Kojo," I said, stepping closer, "look at me." Slowly, he raised his head. His eyes were tired. Not the tiredness of one bad day. The tiredness of a child who had learned too early that silence keeps peace. "When did you stop school?" I asked. "Last year," he said. "At first, they let me sit in class because they thought the money would come. Then they started sending me home. I tried going back. The headmaster said unless the arrears were cleared, I should not return." I felt my throat tighten. "Why didn't you tell me directly?" He looked ashamed. "Auntie said not to worry you. She said you were suffering in Accra, and if I made trouble, you might stop sending money completely. She said she was fixing it. Did Mother know? He shook his head. Mama believed Auntie. Everybody believes Auntie. He hesitated, then leaned closer. Sister, I heard something once. What? Two men came one afternoon while Mama had gone to church women's meeting. They were talking with Auntie under the veranda. They mentioned your name. They said the next payment from the city girl would complete the second plot. The basin slipped from my hands and hit the ground. Second plot. Not one. Second. My aunt had not just taken money. She had been building something with it. Property, security, a future. Just not for us. Kojo, I asked carefully, did you ever see any documents? He nodded. Brown envelope. She keeps it in the metal trunk in her room. She locks it, but sometimes when she is in town, she leaves the key hanging inside her cloth bag. I stared at him. The fear in his face made me want to stop right there, to spare him more trouble. But the image of him on the roadside with oranges burned too hard in my chest. Say nothing to anyone, I told him. He nodded quickly. And Kojo, you will go back to school. He looked at me as if he wanted to believe me, but had forgotten how. By noon, Auntie Efua had gone to town. My mother was visiting a neighbor whose child had a fever. Kojo sat outside pretending to peel cassava. It was the first time the house had felt empty enough for truth to breathe. I went into my aunt's room. The metal trunk was under her bed. The room smelled of talcum powder, old cloth, and dried herbs. I found the bag hanging from a nail, and just as Kojo had said, the key was tucked in an inner pocket. My hands shook so badly I had to try twice before the lock opened. Inside the trunk were folded wrappers, church program leaflets, an old Bible, and beneath them a brown envelope tied with blue thread. I pulled it out. Land documents, photocopies, payment schedules, a site plan. 2 plots near a developing roadside stretch not far from the district highway. Buyer name, Efua Mensima. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. My vision blurred. I turned page after page, deposits made in installments, dates, amounts, and in the margins of one folded note, written in my aunt's own handwriting, Akosua transfer, use 500. Another line below it, after school excuse, balance to plot 2. I covered my mouth with my hand. Not because I was surprised anymore. Because seeing betrayal written down is different from suspecting it. Suspicion is smoke. Proof is fire. There it was. 5 years of my sweat, turned into paperwork under another woman's name. A woman I had called Aunt. A woman who had looked me in the face and talked about family sacrifice. I returned everything exactly as I found it. Every paper, every fold, every cloth on top. Then I locked the trunk and sat in the courtyard until my breathing became normal again. But inside me, something had changed. The grief was still there, the disbelief too. But underneath them, a hard calm had started growing. The kind that comes when pain finally meets evidence. Now I knew. And once you know, you cannot unknow it. Still, I wanted something more than papers from a trunk. I wanted a trail nobody could dismiss. So the following morning, I took the first trotro to town. I told my mother I was going to buy hair cream and a few things from the market. She looked at me strangely, perhaps sensing that something deeper was moving beneath my quietness, but she said nothing. The mobile money kiosk stood beside a pharmacy near the lorry station. I recognized the attendant immediately. A woman named Lydia who used to serve me when I still lived in the village. At first, she only greeted me warmly and asked how Accra was treating me. Then I lowered my voice and said I needed help tracing old transfers. She frowned. That kind of thing is difficult. I know, but please, even if it is just the registered name or confirmation of who withdrew. I showed her some of my old receipts. She studied them. Her expression changed. These were sent to Efua Mensima's line, she said quietly. I know, but were they cashed out or forwarded? She hesitated. I should not be involved in family issues. This is not a family issue anymore, I said. It is theft. Maybe it was the look in my eyes. Maybe it was the way my voice had gone flat. Maybe it was because village women have seen too many quiet crimes hidden behind the word family. Whatever it was, she finally leaned closer. Most of these transfers were cashed out here, she said. Some were split, and a few large ones were sent onward to a rural bank account. I remember because your aunt liked to boast whenever she made big deposits. She once said, "A woman must secure land before old age arrives." I thought maybe her children abroad were helping. My body went cold again. My aunt has no children abroad, I said. Lydia pressed her lips together. Then she whispered, "Then I think you know whose money it was." I thanked her and left, but not before copying down the bank name she mentioned. A small rural bank branch near the district assembly offices. From there I walked under the punishing afternoon sun until I found it. The banking hall was quiet, with only 3 people seated on the wooden benches. A fan turned lazily overhead. I waited my turn and then asked whether I could verify whether certain payments linked to land installments matched an account holder's name, because I had reason to believe my money had been misused. The clerk refused at first. Rules, privacy, procedure. I understood, so I did not force that door. Instead, I asked something else. Whether the land payment company whose name appeared on one of the documents had an office nearby. That question brought me closer. Because they did. A small property office painted green and cream, with posters showing smiling families standing on empty plots of grass. When I entered, a young man in a tie sat behind a desk scrolling through his phone. I gave him the site plan number from memory. He checked his files. "Yes," he said. "That parcel belongs to Madame Efua Mensima. 2 plots, one almost fully paid." My voice came out thin. "When was the first payment made?" He turned a page. "About 4 years ago, exactly when my larger school fee transfers had begun." I thanked him, stepped outside, and leaned against the wall. Cars passed. People laughed at a nearby walkie stand. Life moved on around me like nothing had happened. But I stood there knowing that my brother's missing education was buried in 2 pieces of land under my aunt's name. My money had become soil, and she had expected me never to dig. When I got home that evening, Auntie Efua was in the courtyard fanning charcoal for the cooking fire. She looked up and smiled too brightly. "You were out long," she said. "Yes," I replied. "In town?" "Yes." "Buying what?" "The truth," I said. The fan in her hand paused. Only for a second. Then it started again. "I don't understand these city jokes of yours," she said. I smiled. "By tomorrow, you will." She did not answer, but the rest of the evening, I could feel her watching me. At dinner, my mother tried to start normal conversation. She asked about Accra rents. She asked whether I might return to salon work. She asked Kojo to fetch water. Nobody answered properly. Suspicion had entered the room and sat with us like an invisible guest. Late that night, my aunt came to my room. She stood by the door, not entering fully. "Akosua," she said softly. Whatever confusion is in your mind, remember that family is family. Problems should not leave the house. I sat up on the mat. Then perhaps family should not steal from family. Her face hardened. Mind your words. No, I said. You mind yours? 5 years of lies, and now you want to teach me about respect? She stepped inside now, closing the door behind her. Be careful, girl. There are things you do not understand. Money sent from outside can be used where there is greatest need. Was the greatest need your land? The silence that followed was answer enough. For the first time since I arrived, the mask slipped completely. She looked at me not like a niece, but like an obstacle. You think suffering in Accra made you important, she said. Do you know what it means to remain here and carry everybody's burden? Your mother is weak. Your brother is young. If I did not think ahead, this family would still have nothing. You did not think ahead for this family, I said. You thought ahead for yourself. Her jaw tightened. Tomorrow, I told her, we will talk in front of everyone. She stared at me a long moment, then turned and left. But I noticed something as she walked away. Not confidence, fear. And fear in guilty people means truth is near. The next morning was Sunday, church day, the perfect day for masks, white clothes, and holy songs hiding ugly hearts. We returned from service around noon. Relatives drifted in and out of the compound because there was a small naming ceremony in the next house and people were passing through. I waited for the yard to fill just enough. My mother, Kojo, Auntie Efua, 2 older cousins, neighbor women who respected my mother. Then I brought a chair into the middle of the yard and placed the brown envelope on it. What is this drama? My aunt snapped. I ignored her. Instead, I faced my mother. Mama, I need you to hear everything before anybody interrupts. She looked frightened. Akosua. For 5 years, I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. I sent money for Kojo's school, for food, for medicine, and for this house. I sent it through Auntie Efua because I trusted her. Whispers began near the gate. I pulled out the receipts first, one by one, held them up, read the dates, read the amounts. Then I turned to Kojo. Tell them what happened at school. His hands trembled, but he spoke. He told them how he was sent home, how he missed term after term, how he stopped going entirely, how he sold oranges and ran errands to avoid feeling useless. My mother began to cry before he finished. Then I opened the envelope. The yard became so quiet I could hear the firewood crack in the kitchen. I held up the land documents. 2 plots, I said. Purchased under Auntie Efua's name. Payments began around the same time my larger transfers started. I heard her discussing the papers at night. I saw the documents in her trunk. And yesterday, I confirmed at the property office that the plots belonged to her. Auntie Efua stood abruptly. You searched my room? Yes, I said. The way you searched my life and emptied it. Gasps broke out around the yard. One of the older cousins reached for the papers. He read in silence, then looked up at my aunt with disbelief. Efua, is this true? She lifted her chin. I did what needed to be done. My mother stared at her sister as if she were seeing a stranger. What needed to be done? She whispered. Auntie Efua's voice rose. Land, security, something real. You people think school alone saves a family? If tomorrow trouble comes, can exercise books shelter you? Can exam forms protect you? I stepped forward. But the land is in your name. Her lips parted. She had no answer ready for that. The whole yard turned toward her. Finally, she said, I intended to transfer one later. One later? I repeated. After 5 years? After Kojo dropped out? After my mother kept believing his fees were paid? Kojo was crying now, though silently. My mother covered her head with her cloth and rocked on the stool, repeating only one sentence. My son was home all this time, and I did not know. That broke something in me, because until then, my anger had burned hottest toward my aunt. But in that moment I saw the wider wound. My mother had not only been deceived, she had been made a spectator in her own child's suffering. Auntie Efua folded her arms. Enough of this public humiliation, she said. Whatever happened can be discussed privately. No, I replied. Private is where thieves grow comfortable. Then, with everyone watching, I said the words I had been carrying since town. If this matter is not resolved, I will take it to the police. That changed her face. Not guilt, not shame. Panic. You would arrest your own aunt? If I must. You want to destroy family? You destroyed it when you stole from it? For a moment I thought she might lunge at me. Instead, she pointed a shaking finger. You ungrateful girl. I helped raise you. And I honored that help, I said. With trust. You answered with betrayal. Nobody spoke after that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because truth had already said enough. The police post was small. Just 2 rooms, a desk, a bench, and the smell of old paper and heat. I went there the next morning with my receipts, copied details from the land papers, and Kojo's school arrears note from the land papers, and Kojo's school arrears note from the headmaster, which we collected on the way. The female officer on duty listened carefully. She did not rush me. When I finished, she tapped her pen against the file and asked one question. Do you want mediation first, or formal charges? That question stayed with me, because anger is loud, but consequence is heavy. I wanted justice. I wanted my brother back in school. I wanted my mother to stop crying in the middle of the night. I wanted the years of hunger in Accra to mean something again. But I also knew prison would not bring all the money back, so I chose a path that would force repayment first. The officer summoned my aunt. She came 2 days later dressed in her best kaba and slit as if decent clothes could rewrite dirty actions. At first, she denied everything. Then the officer laid out the receipts, the school records, and the copied payment schedule from the land office. Piece by piece, my aunt's confidence withered. Finally, she admitted it. Not with remorse, with excuses. She said she had feared old age. She said no one ever thinks of the women who remain in the village. She said if she had told me, I would have refused. She said land was an investment for the family's future. The officer listened, then asked the question that cut through all her speeches. If it was for the family, why is it in your name alone? My aunt had no answer. After hours of back and forth, an agreement was drawn. One plot would be transferred and sold immediately. The proceeds would clear Kojo's school arrears, return a large portion of the money, and cover my mother's medical review. The second plot would remain frozen until a repayment schedule for the balance was completed. If she defaulted, formal criminal charges would proceed. She signed. Her hand trembled so much the signature looked nothing like her usual bold writing. I watched her sign and felt no victory, only sadness. Because sometimes justice does not feel triumphant. Sometimes it only feels necessary. Kojo returned to school the following week. I will never forget that morning. He wore a second-hand uniform we bought in town because he had outgrown the old one. His sandals were still not perfect, but they were whole. He stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, adjusting the collar. Not because he cared about style, because dignity had returned to his body, and he was trying to remember how it felt. When he looked at me, there was something in his eyes I had not seen since I arrived. Hope. My mother also changed. For days after the agreement, she spoke very little. She moved around the house like a woman mourning someone who was still alive. And in a way, she was. She was mourning the sister she thought she knew. One evening, we sat outside after supper while the sky turned orange behind the palm trees. She took my hand and said, "Forgive me." I shook my head immediately. "No, Mama." But she continued, "I should have asked more questions. I trusted too easily. My own son suffered in front of me while I believed sweet words." Tears rose in my eyes. "You were deceived too." "Yes," she said, "but a mother should see." I squeezed her hand. "We see now." That was all I could offer. Not perfect healing, not erased pain, just truth. And sometimes truth is the first medicine. With the first recovered money, I paid Kojo's fees in person. Not through anyone, not by message, not by trust floating through other hands. I stood in the school office and watched the clerk stamp the receipt. Then I folded that paper carefully and tucked it into my bag. A new kind of receipt. Not one proving I had sent money. One proving it had arrived where it belonged. I also took my mother for proper tests at the district hospital. Nothing dramatic, thank God, but enough to show that neglect had been eating away at her health. We bought medication. Real medication. Not the random herbs and half-doses that had been offered while my aunt kept redirecting money into land. And with what remained, I did something for myself for the first time in years. I rented a tiny container space near the junction. Not big, not fancy. Just enough for a mirror, 2 salon chairs, a dryer, and a wooden shelf for creams and combs. I painted the door light blue. When I turned the key for the first time, I stood there smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. Because after years of labor feeding a lie, I had finally built something honest. My own hands again. My own future. Not stolen, not diverted. Mine. As for Auntie Efua, the village did not forget. In places like ours, news travels faster than rain clouds. People who once praised her caution now lowered their voices when she passed. Women who admired her wisdom began holding their purses a little tighter. She was not imprisoned, at least not by bars. But shame has its own walls, and every time she sold a cloth or bought tomatoes in the market, she knew somebody there had heard what she did. Maybe that was punishment, maybe not enough. I no longer spent energy deciding. What mattered more was what we rebuilt after her. Kojo started studying harder than ever. Maybe because he knew time had been stolen from him. Maybe because he wanted to prove my sacrifices still had value. Sometimes at night, I would find him bent over his books under the weak bulb in the hall, lips moving silently as he read. Each time I saw that sight, something inside me softened. The road ahead was not perfect. 5 years cannot be repaired in 5 weeks. Some money was gone forever. Some trust, too. There were still awkward silences at funerals when my aunt stood on one side and we stood on another. There were still mornings when my mother woke up heavy with regret. There were still nights when I remembered how I starved in Accra while land rose under somebody else's name. But pain had stopped being a mystery. And that changed everything. Because what crushes many people is not only suffering, it is suffering without understanding. Suffering while believing your love is working, when in truth someone is feeding on it in secret. Once that secret was dragged into daylight, it lost power. That is the thing about betrayal. It grows best in darkness. Expose it, and it begins to rot. Months later, on a Saturday afternoon, I was plaiting a customer's hair in my little salon when Kojo burst in waving a paper above his head. He was breathless. "Sister! Sister!" I nearly dropped the comb. "What happened?" He grinned so wide I saw the little gap between his front teeth from childhood. I passed. For a second I just stared. Then he thrust the exam slip into my hand, and I saw it clearly. He had passed. Not perfectly. Not like some radio miracle story, but honestly, solidly, proudly. Enough to move forward. Enough to prove that delay had not destroyed him. I laughed and cried at the same time. My customer started clapping. Kojo danced right there in the salon doorway like a small boy again. And in that moment, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Not relief, not revenge. Restoration. The kind that comes quietly. The kind that does not announce itself with drums. The kind that simply stands in front of you one day and says, "What was broken is breathing again." If there is one thing I learned from all this, it is this: never confuse silence with peace. Sometimes silence is only fear wearing polite clothes. Sometimes the person saying, "Leave it, we are family," is the very person hoping truth never speaks. I almost accepted my brother's suffering as bad luck. I almost believed confusion, excuses, and age should be respected more than evidence. I almost let guilt keep me quiet. But love should not demand blindness, and family should never be a hiding place for theft. I did not leave Accra to become rich. I left so the people I loved would stand taller than I did. When I discovered someone had used that love to buy land in secret, I had two choices: keep quiet and protect appearances, or speak and protect the future. I chose the future. And if you are listening to me now, maybe there is a truth in your own life you keep postponing because you are afraid of what it will break. I understand that fear, but I also know this: a truth that breaks a lie is not destruction. It is rescue. Today, Kojo is back on his path. My mother laughs more than she cries. My salon keys sleep under my pillow at night because I still cannot believe I own something honest and small and mine. And every time I pass that roadside where I first saw my brother selling oranges instead of sitting in class, I remember the woman I was in that moment. Confused, hurt, shaking, standing face to face with a betrayal she could not yet name. I want to reach back through time and tell her, do not be afraid of what you are about to uncover. The truth will hurt you first, but then it will free you. Because it did. Not all at once, not cleanly, but enough. Enough for school fees to reach a classroom. Enough for a mother to reclaim her voice. Enough for a sister's sacrifice not to disappear into somebody else's land papers. Enough for us to begin again. Closing CTA. If this story touched you, remember this: the people closest to you should never make honesty feel like rebellion. And if you stayed with me until the end, then you already know. Truth may arrive late, but when it comes, it changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe for more original, emotional African stories, because the next one might remind you of a truth somebody around you has been hiding for too long.